The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. The new chapter in Donald Trump's funding fight. A federal judge approves a plan to cut one agency while another places a pause on future cuts. What it means for you.
There are serious search and seizure issues that will be litigated.
Accused healthcare CEO killer Luigi Mangione back in court. What his attorney had to say today, giving the public a hint at the strategy his defense team could take. Then a record cold snap continues, the all-time lows that are broken, as well as when the country will begin to thaw. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Tonight, a judge has cleared the way for the Trump administration to put thousands of USAID employees, both in the United States and around the world, on leave. U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols removed his temporary block on the effort to remove all but a small fraction of staffers from their posts and give those abroad a 30-day deadline to move back to the United States. It's a win for the administration, which, in conjunction with the cost-cutting Department of Government Efficiency, moved quickly to dismantle the agency, saying its work was wasteful and out of line with the president's agenda. The development comes as 6,000 IRS workers are left reeling, grappling with a mass agency-wide firing just yesterday. Democratic lawmakers quick to point out that the timing is risky.
Going after the Internal Revenue Service and firing people just ahead of tax season. It's crazy.
Most individuals have to file their taxes by April 15th. The National Treasury Employee Union says the terminations could affect that process by reducing customer service availability for filers who need help, while also warning that refund checks could be late this year. Meantime, a plan to carry out mass firings of civilian probationary employees at the Pentagon has been put on pause. Defense officials say the mass firings are on hold until Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and the Pentagon's Office of General Counsel can do a more thorough review of the impacts such firings could have on U.S. military readiness. Some Republican lawmakers in support of the move.
That we have to do it in accordance with the law. And so I think that this is proof positive that they're doing it, that they're taking it slow. They're being very exacting about the next steps that they're going to take. And I think it's very prudent.
The mass terminations could impact more than 50,000 people. They had been expected to start getting fired as early as today. The stock market tumbled today following new data suggesting most Americans are growing concerned about where the economy is headed. The Dow and the S&P 500 both dropped around 1.7%, and the Nasdaq dropped 2.2%. The National News Desk's Atra Al-Nashar reports.
What should be a honeymoon phase for a new president has taken a sour turn for Americans watching their bottom line. Expectations for personal finances and the short-term economic outlook both plunging by about 10% this month, according to the closely watched University of Michigan surveys of consumers. The president said this the week after winning the election.
We're going to get your energy bills in half, and that's going to bring down the cost, generally speaking.
By every measure, gas to groceries, prices have only gone up in the month since President Trump was sworn in.
Your total is...
On the economic front, the administration's main focus has been slashing the scope of the federal government.
We're cutting spending with the advice of our IT consultant, Elon Musk. And then we're also looking into supply side things. We're still going to see some memory of Biden's inflation. It's not going to go away in a month.
The uncertainty has the private sector uneasy. The country's largest private employer, Walmart, out with a new earnings report, says customers are resilient but cautious. We are 1 month into the year, and there's a lot that we don't know, CFO John David Rainey told the Associated Press. He's talking about tariffs.
We're having reciprocal tariffs. Whatever they charge, we charge. Very simple.
The president plans to hit trading partners with what he calls reciprocal tariffs starting the first week in April, brushing off economists' warnings tariffs disrupt supply chains and raise prices for Americans. Politically speaking, this is a rare opportunity for Democrats, who are in the minority in both the House and Senate, to go on the offensive, as they don't have many options legislatively to stop the president's agenda.
Donald Trump and Republicans consistently promised that they were going to lower the high cost of living, and they've done the exact opposite.
The majority of Americans are starting to agree. A CNN poll out this week found 62% feel President Trump has not gone far enough to address inflation. In Washington, I'm Atrell Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Right now, a search underway for a possible shooter outside of Louisville. Witnesses say someone fled the scene after 2 women and a man were shot outside of a driver's license office in Valley Station, Kentucky. The male died at the scene while the 2 women passed away at the hospital shortly thereafter. A motive now being investigated. Police say they do not believe there is any further threat to the public at this time. Accused murderer Luigi Mangione, meantime, in a New York City courtroom. The 26-year-old made a brief appearance this afternoon, his first hearing since his arraignment on state charges in late December. Prosecutors say Mangione gunned down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Manhattan as the CEO headed to an investors conference. Mangione has pleaded not guilty, and his defense team has argued his case has already been treated unfairly due to the unprecedented security presence around him that could interfere with the future jury's perception of the case.
He's being treated differently because he's being held in federal custody than any other person who would be facing serious murder one charges.
His attorney also went on to say that she is concerned Mangione's rights were violated in an unlawful search and seizure during his arrest in Pennsylvania, which she will also address in court. It comes as Mangione today made his first formal statement on a website launched by his New York defense team, thanking supporters, including the many who've donated to his legal defense fund, which now has $500,000. Los Angeles Fire Chief Kirsten Crowley is out of a job today. LA Mayor Karen Bass told Crowley her termination is effective immediately. Bass cited the immediate response by the LA Fire Department, or lack thereof. She says 1,000 firefighters were sent home the morning the fires broke out instead of on duty. At least 29 people died in those wildfires that also caused billions of dollars in damage. A JetBlue pilot is in custody on a charge of sexual exploitation of a minor. Jeremy Gooddorf of Ohio was arrested on his airplane last night, right before a planned flight from Boston to Paris. Customs and Border Protection agents had identified a warrant for his arrest out of North Carolina. Gooddorf was allowed a $10,000 bail, but must get to North Carolina by Tuesday. The first lawsuit against Delta comes less than 2 days after the airline offered $30,000, no strings attached, to each passenger on board the flight that landed upside down. One man in Texas says he was drenched with jet fuel and suffered significant injuries, along with severe emotional distress. He says he deserves more than $30 grand. Delta says it's not commenting on pending litigation. The investigation into the flip is ongoing. Tonight, the Mideast ceasefire, now in its 5th week, is on shaky ground with new details that threaten to upend the critical truce. One day after Israel announced one of the bodies handed over by Hamas did not belong to Shiri Bibas, an Israeli mother taken hostage, the IDF is now saying their forensic findings on the bodies of Shiri's 2 children, Kfir and Ariel, show they were killed with bare hands.
Ariel and Kfir were not killed in an airstrike. Ariel and Kfir Bibas were murdered by terrorists in cold blood. The terrorists did not shoot the 2 young boys. They killed them with their bare hands.
Hamas has long said the boys and their mother were killed in an Israeli airstrike sometime last year. The militant group also acknowledged there could have been an error in the exchange of Shiri, complicated by bombing in the area where the bodies were held. Hamas handed over a new casket to the Red Cross tonight, possibly this time with the remains of Shiri Bibas. Meanwhile, Arab countries are racing to develop an alternative plan for Gaza to counter President Donald Trump's proposal for the U.S. to take over and rebuild. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joining us now from Washington, where she sat down this week with the new Israeli ambassador to the U.S. to discuss the issue.
Egypt's President al-Sisi in Saudi Arabia Friday for an informal meeting with the Gulf Arab states and Jordan to discuss the future of Gaza.
Both Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states have made it very clear they will not finance reconstruction unless there is a vision.
Pressure mounting to formulate an alternative to Donald Trump's plan for the U.S. to take over redevelopment. Trump telling reporters on Air Force One Wednesday he hasn't seen the Egyptian plan.
I haven't seen it. When I see it, I'll let you know.
The new Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Leiter, tells us he supports Trump's vision.
It's not exactly being met by some of your neighbors very warmly.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, our focus on the president's proposal is to put the emphasis on the fact that he's giving Gazans free choice.
What to do with the 2 million residents of Gaza remains a major diplomatic sticking point. The prime minister of the Palestinian Authority says Gazans do not want to leave.
Our people are determined to stay in their homes. Our people want to be part of rebuilding their homes.
And we think that Egypt, Jordan, and other countries around the world should be partners in helping to solve this issue. It shouldn't just be an Israeli issue. And I think that's where President Trump is going.
Do you think it's possible to get everybody on board?
I do.
This comes as Israel works to expand on the Abraham Accords, developing new and deepening established diplomatic relationships in the region.
Do you think the future of Gaza has any potential to rock the boat in those strong relationships that Israel's working to build within the region, Saudi Arabia specifically?
No, I think actually it's going to help build a relationship. First, let's pursue peace among our countries and not make it conditional on other issues.
Both Egypt and Jordan have rejected Trump's idea to move all 2 million Palestinians living in Gaza to their countries. This view will likely be reiterated at an emergency Arab League summit to discuss Gaza, set for March 4th. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Kayla, thank you. Nurses represented by SEIU continued their week-long strike against 3 Geisinger medical facilities in Lucerne County, Pennsylvania. Roughly 800 nurses walked off the job on Monday, seeking higher pay, better benefits, as well as a solution to a staffing shortage.
If we're standing out here, there's something wrong in there. There's coworkers I have that are paying like $500 copays just to get medicine, and that's something that really needs to change, especially for like healthcare workers.
The nurses will still be out picketing tomorrow morning, but do plan to end their strike tomorrow night. The union says their representatives will meet with Geisinger beginning on Monday to restart negotiations for a new contract. One of Sean Diddy Combs' lawyers wants off the case. Anthony Rocco filed a motion last night with the court to be removed without explanation. He says, quote, under no circumstances can I continue to effectively serve as counsel for Sean Combs. Rocco told the judge there are sufficient reasons for the request, but did not give details because he didn't want to give up privileged information. Combs has pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking and racketeering charges. Coming up, extreme cold hasn't let up in many cities, but that's about to change. The latest weekend forecast. Then what college students in Washington are demanding from leaders as they rally for undocumented immigrants. And later, the change advocates are calling for to prevent more women from dying of breast cancer. We'll be right back. Much of the country is finally about to warm up after an Arctic blast broke dozens of temperature records this week. Today, several cities set or tied new records as the cold lingers, according to ABC News. And you can see them right there. Lincoln, Nebraska reaching negative 17 degrees. Kansas City, Missouri reaching negative 5. Memphis, Tennessee was at 15, and Birmingham, Alabama hitting 17. Temperatures will rise this weekend, especially in the Rockies and Plains, where it could reach the 50s and 60s up to the Dakotas. Most eastern states will still be colder than average, but they will warm up earlier in the week. Those in the Pacific Northwest should be prepared for possible flooding and runoff issues due to heavy rain and higher elevation snowmelt tomorrow through Monday. And a live look now at Gaylord, Michigan, where the National Weather Service says that since they received their first measurable snow on November 20th of last year, there have been 86 days out of 93 with snow. So in the 4 months since, they have gotten 180.9 inches of snow. Just incredible. That equals more than 15 feet in all. And their all-time record is 185.6 inches, which was set back in 2006. The Trump administration has removed all migrants from Gitmo. A DHS official said 177 Venezuelan migrants were flown from the facility to Venezuela, and one was sent back to the United States. 80 of them are accused of being linked to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Venezuelan officials called the detentions unjust and said any migrants with pending criminal charges will be placed in the hands of the courts. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau not backing down as President Trump threatens to make Canada the 51st state. After Canada's victory over the U.S. in last night's hockey game in Boston, Trudeau wrote on X, quote, "You can't take our country and you can't take our game." Political tensions leaked into the game, with fans booing the opposing country's national anthem. Trump has talked about using economic force to pressure Canada to join the U.S. And we have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Washington, where college students are protesting immigration arrests.
Migrants united!
Never be defeated!
Passionate pleas from students on the University of Washington's Red Square.
We've been talking a lot in classes, in our groups, about the potential presence of ICE coming on campus for raids.
Amid ICE raids happening around the country, multiple student groups are demanding UW refuse to host ICE and its partner agencies for recruiting purposes and other events.
We have to hold the University of Washington accountable for their actions.
These protesters turned in a petition to school leaders, calling for UW to defend the rights of migrants on campus and provide legal resources if needed. UW has postponed one on-campus panel involving Homeland Security investigations, but students worry it could be rescheduled.
No one from the university would go on camera to discuss this matter, but a spokeswoman says that the fraternity, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, is under investigation and its activities have been summarily suspended for allegations of hazing. But that's all the spokeswoman would say on the matter.
Several members from Sigma Alpha Epsilon were home at the time, but none wanted to talk on camera. They did have a few choice words they yelled from the doorstep that I can't repeat on TV. Right now, we don't know what type of activity the university is investigating or what prompted it. If proven true, though, this would be the 9th hazing incident on campus in the past 5 years. 7 of the 8 prior incidents involved fraternities and male club sports on campus, most of which include requiring members to drink alcohol. The university dance team is the only female group on the list.
Buttonwood Park Zoo in New Bedford and Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence are ramping up biosecurity measures to combat the avian flu. That includes more foot baths for zookeepers.
This way we don't spread anything from place to place. So we have different areas that are different risk levels. And just by doing this anywhere we can, it'll minimize that risk.
Buttonwood Park Zoo lost its 21-year-old harbor seal Blue to the flu earlier this month.
It was a shock. It was not expected. This was a very healthy, middle-aged male harbor seal.
Acting Director Shara Raposa says 3 animals there have died from avian flu in the past 4 weeks.
Coming up, the breast cancer detecting tools that a congresswoman wants to make all insurance plans cover. We'll be back after this. Women across America are getting potentially life-saving information in their mammogram reports. A sweeping federal mandate now requires them to be told whether they have dense breast tissue, which can increase their risk of cancer. But as Lisa Fletcher reports, it's what happens next that matters most, and why one member of Congress is leading the fight to make sure all women can get the critical cancer screening they need.
More than 40% of women have dense breast tissue, putting them at an increased risk of cancer. Dense tissue can mask tumors on a mammogram because dense tissue and tumors are both white. It has delayed critical diagnoses in women across America. Density is a known risk factor, but little is known about why.
We've been working on dense breast cancer for about 3 to 4 years now.
Dr. Noelle Cutter is an Ironman triathlete in a class of women, by all accounts, in their prime, fit, healthy, and young, who shouldn't be facing cancer. Yet they were.
And that's actually what started my questioning of this, is why are so many of these women getting diagnosed with breast cancer? So I think that that's been a huge passion of mine, just kind of answering that question.
A question that launched her groundbreaking new research that could change the way women with dense breast cancer are diagnosed and treated. Cutter's lab found that cancer cells in dense breast tissue may actually be resistant to chemotherapy.
When we repeat treat them with chemotherapy, they're not dying. So they're not responding to the treatment as we might expect.
Dr. Cutter's research will be published in a major medical journal this year.
What's it like to be on the cutting edge of this research?
I never think of it as being on the cutting edge. You just go to work and work hard. And, sometimes we discover some pretty amazing things.
The key, says Cutter, is catching dense breast cancer early with tools like MRI and ultrasound.
They're so portable. They're so effective. They're so affordable. That should be armed in every general practitioner's office.
But in many states, those essential additional screenings aren't covered by insurance.
The insurance has to have full coverage, no cost share to get these additional screenings. And that's what has to happen.
Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, a cancer survivor herself, is pushing a bipartisan effort for universal insurance coverage of supplemental screenings. Her Find It Early Act was introduced in the last session, but didn't come to a vote.
In order to pass a piece of legislation, you have to have 218 votes. And so that's why I always look at the external pressure on the institution of people, of organizations who care about these things, of putting the pressure on the members of Congress to support the legislation, which then can get past that finish line.
DeLauro says she will persist because with no federal legislation in place, 16 states, including California, Virginia, and Florida, have no laws to mandate coverage for additional screening, and many other states are inconsistent.
What's at stake if we don't fill those gaps?
Well, if we don't fill those gaps, women die. It's very simple. It's very simple.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
And Congresswoman DeLauro is reintroducing the Find It Early Act in the coming weeks. She stressed that the best way for her bill to pass is if the public reaches out to their member of Congress to press for it to move forward. And to find out how to contact your member of Congress, just go to spotlightinvestigates.com. Coming up, a major change to the face of a franchise. Literally, the famous baseball ban that is finally over. And it's not because of the new roster. For the first time in 49 years, players are going to be allowed to sport facial hair. In the 1970s, owner George Steinbrenner placed a prohibition on growing beards, although mustaches were allowed. Now, owner Hal Steinbrenner, George's son, says he's relaxing the policy, saying, quote, well-groomed beards will be welcomed, as well as longer hair, but players still can't have hair that goes past their collars. Players were just told of the change, so it's going to take a little bit of time to see that impact within the men themselves, but I can't wait to see it. I'm happy for them. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.